Ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland, testified during the public hearing as part of the impeachment investigation. And remember, Sondland had previously given testimony in a closed-door hearing that made it appear as though maybe there was a defense that Republicans could rely on when it comes to Donald Trump and this very clear quid pro quo with the Ukrainian president. But today's testimony really did open the floodgates when it comes to Donald Trump's involvement, direct involvement in demanding investigations, and more importantly, who told government officials, including Gordon Sondland, to work with Giuliani in order to pursue these investigations. Without further ado, let's go to the first video.
Secretary Perry, Ambassador Volker, and I worked with Mr. Rudy Giuliani on Ukraine matters at the express direction of the President of the United States. We did not want to work with Mr. Giuliani. Simply put, we were playing the hand we were dealt. We all understood that if we refused to work with Mr. Giuliani, we would lose a very important opportunity to cement relations between the United States and Ukraine. So we followed the president's orders.
So again, that very last part is the most important, where he says we followed the president's orders. And if you see the headlines in response to his testimony today, oftentimes they'll be worded along the lines of Sondland decides to protect himself rather than the president, right? Which is what some Republicans were hoping he wouldn't do. Right. And so today his testimony again is very damning. It draws a direct connection between Donald Trump and the demands for these investigations.
We're at the point where it's every man for himself. And if you recall, because none of us were alive, during the Nixon impeachment, this is ultimately what got him. I mean, it wasn't even that he stepped down, he resigned before he could fully be impeached, perhaps to save the Republican Party. I'm sure there's many historians who would have different interpretations, but I personally think that's where we're gonna go. They're gonna end up to try to wrap this up as soon as possible so that they can make it into this, we have Senate elections, they wanna hold the Senate. If Donald Trump decides that he wants to step down, that's like a real hope there. After every man for himself, then maybe Mike Pence comes in and he establishes enough strength. That's just like, at this point conspiracy, but we're dealing with the Trump administration. We have no idea what's gonna happen. We have members of the administration who are stepping down, quitting, who are turning on him, and this testimony was explicitly clear and legally advised. That language was legally advised to protect him.
Well, let's go to a little more of that legally advised testimony. In this next clip, he throws Giuliani further down that bus or under that bus.
Although we disagreed with the need to involve Mr. Giuliani, at the time we did not believe that his role was improper. As I previously testified, if I had known of all of Mr. Giuliani's dealings or his associations with individuals, some of whom are now under criminal indictment, I personally would not have acquiesced to his participation. Still, given what we knew at the time, what we were asked to do did not appear to be wrong.
So remember, Sondland was not a government official before the Trump administration. He has absolutely no expertise in governing. The only expertise he has is giving a presidential candidate, or in the case of Donald Trump, someone who's about to be inaugurated, $1 million. And that's how he was chosen for the position of ambassador to the European Union. So I only mention that because when you have these individuals who have no expertise in what the laws are, what governing is, they're going to move forward with a legal request, which is exactly what happened with Trump's request to launch these investigations into the Bidens.
Yeah, it looks bad. Looks like they did the thing, right? I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think you think they did the crimes? I think they did the crimes.
They did the crimes.
They did it.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and also you have to keep in mind that these traditionally the political appointments go to smaller, inconsequential, regions of the country, of the world. Countries that, like the Maldives, or places that, maybe great places.
I look forward to all the tweets from the Maldivians.
Sorry, Maldivians, but your ambassador
Konst
usually is
viciously anti-Maldives.
No, I'm just saying
but I get what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying.
Not the head of the EU, and specifically Ukraine. There's financial interests there, so I don't know what his connections are in terms of. That might be something an investigative reporter, if they haven't done so already, would be very interesting to see. Ambassador Sondland's connections to financial interests, natural gas. I mean, really, it seems like everything comes down to the Ukraine and natural gas and liquefied natural gas. So I'd be very curious to see why he, in particular, was put in charge of that role.
Oh, you know what? I haven't heard anyone with that take yet, and that's actually a really good point. So yeah, I think that he's realizing, look, the walls are caving in on me, and the main reason why he changed his testimony from the closed door hearing is because all those other government officials who testified against Trump did not corroborate what Gordon Sondland was saying, right? And so look, you're right, Nando. They did the thing. It's so obvious, and the evidence just keeps piling on.
Right there, they did it. It says it right there in black and white. They did the thing.
Hashtag.
And these are not, Democrats from the opposing party. These are and this individual that we're talking about right now, Gordon Sondland, is not a never Trumper. He gave Trump $1 million.
This guy's a hotel guy, hotel business magnate who, classic dumb guy fashion, thought that he could enter respectful society by buying an ambassadorship to the EU, because it sounds important to a guy like him, and he thinks he could get into the cool parties now. But
he thought it was going to be fun.
He thought it was going to be buckets of fun.
And instead
he has to do crimes with Giuliani. That sounds like a nightmare.
Well, let's quickly talk about the notion of a quid pro quo. As we all know, Republicans kept arguing there's no evidence of a quid pro quo, no quid pro quo. Trump keeps saying that there was no quid pro quo. But what did Gordon Sondland have to say about that?
I know that members of this committee frequently frame these complicated issues in the form of a simple question: was there a quid pro quo? As I testified previously, with regard to the requested White House call and the White House meeting, the answer is yes.
So he says there absolutely was a quid pro quo, and the testimony, even in his opening statement, was so damning that you have a Trump loyalist like Devin Nunes looking like
white in the face.
I mean, let's show the video and everyone can judge for themselves.
That concludes our 45 minutes. I now recognize Mr. Nunes. Oh, okay. Why don't we take a 5 or 10 minute break?
Thank you.
All right, so that was explosive testimony there.
Yeah, that's the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme.
Yes,
zoom in.
Yes.
Full circle.
Yeah.
Oh, look, when you have the truth on your side, there's nothing more liberating than that, right? Just be an honest person. I mean, and that, by the way, that goes for Democrats as well. Acknowledge the fact that Hunter Biden working on that board was a bad idea. It was a conflict of interest, and it didn't look good, and it's something that Republicans can, I think, in a very credible way, latch onto. And so why don't you undermine the power that they have by saying, you know what? Biden did make a bad decision. His son shouldn't have been on that board. But this is very different. That might have been an abuse of power or nepotism. In this case, we're talking about Trump trying to create an avenue for a foreign government to meddle in our elections. Okay?
Well, I think ultimately, what we were just saying about the natural gas, that's really what there's the fight out in front about Russia versus America and these interests, the oligarchs versus the American oligarchs. But what it really comes down to is Secretary Clinton was in a battle with Putin. Remember the Russian reset? Over natural gas, over exploring the Arctic for natural gas and oil. And the Ukraine, has a pipeline there. It's a key part of this. And the EU, of course, has banned natural gas, has taken a big stand on this issue. And the less unified the EU is, including the UK, the more Putin has a stake in this. And so I think the Democrats, from their perspective, that would uncover, who really wants to have this territory and our own conflicts. I'm not saying what Putin was doing was right or wrong, or there's this Russian conspiracy. I'm saying that the Ukraine this is all about natural gas assets. That's what Barista or whatever the organization is.
Burisma.
Barista, like AOC. She was involved in it somehow too. Okay, so they did the thing. Let's game it out. They did the thing. The testimony from Gordon Sondland says he did the thing. Let's game this out. What happens?
Yeah. Well, I think that he's going to be impeached in the House, and that's what the House does, right? But that doesn't mean that Trump is going to be removed from office. Then it goes to the Senate, and the Senate gets to decide whether they're going to convict Trump on the articles of impeachment. So really, I don't know how it's going to play out in the Senate. I know that everyone is already convinced that Republicans overwhelmingly are going to support Trump. But there are some cracks beginning to form because the evidence presented in this testimony or in the various examples of testimony show that Trump did it. It's clear. There's clear linkage of Trump to the calls for the investigation. He did freeze the military aid. So I don't know how it's going to play out in the Senate. Look, for me, this is not simply about like, I hate Trump and I want to get rid of him, right? For anyone who thinks that that should be the only motivating factor, you're wrong. Because that sets a terrible precedent. For me, it is about protecting our elections. It is about, more importantly, ensuring that a person in a position of power isn't above the law.
Yeah.
And so senators, Republican senators, don't want to be on the record voting against convicting Trump. That's why they're so afraid of what's going on right now. I want them on that record because I want them to basically say, yeah, the president is above the law. He can go ahead and undermine our democracy by having a political or a foreign government launch a political investigation into his opponent.
And there was a sort of line that was out there before the impeachment thing that said, oh, you impeach Trump and you're only gonna rally his supporters more and make him more popular. But after 2016, 2015, those years, I've stopped trying to make political predictions. I have no idea how it's gonna play to the public. I stopped making those predictions a long time ago. It does look like Trump's numbers are down, so maybe this whole impeachment thing is probably
his loyal supporters are his loyal supporters. But I think what the Democrats have to be careful of here is if it does drag out, this is surface level testimony right now. If it was truly a court case, which it's not, and quid pro quo is not necessarily a legal battle that we're gonna be fighting. If it goes to the Senate, how deep are they gonna go? And once you go that deep, that's when Joe Biden's name and Hunter Biden are gonna be repeated over and over. Why was Hunter Biden on the board? What was the board doing? What was this really about? And of course, that's what Donald Trump wants because his entire motive was, it went back to that server. It went back to 2016. Grab that server that the Ukrainians had. It really, it's this delicate balance that the Democrats, the establishment Democrats and the establishment Republicans, and their deep state, they're battling it out. But the populists, I think, are the ones that are going to win. So
maybe it's all for the best.
That's what I'm saying.
If it destroys Biden's campaign, that's a net positive.
And look, outside of political strategy and trying to predict what's going to be best for candidates, for me it's just about
they did the bad thing and they should probably be punished.
Yeah, for me that's what it's about.
It's as simple as that.
It's as simple as that, right? And I know people probably won't believe this, but I would feel the same way if it was a Democrat in office.
Yeah, of course. I 100% believe it.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly were not nice about Obama's wrongdoings when we were,
those stupid Democrats under the bus.
Let's bring up drones while we're here.
Yeah.
Can we weave that in, drones?
Obama's deportation policy, let's impeach him for that.
Well, that was definitely terrible policy and we called him out. And so that's the right thing to do, right? Someone in a position of power should be called out when they abuse that power. So I want to read just a few member comments in regard to this story. Gabby Marita writes in and says, I am 100% with Anna. If Democrats had any spine, they'd outflank Republicans and call Hunter Biden to testify, then turn to Nunes and Jordan and say, pick one, Jared or Ivanka. That is such a good point, right?
Both.
That's good.
Javanka.
Javanka. I know Javanka Beckles is amazing.
I don't know who
so
that
don't want to loop her into that.
No, not her.
Council member from Northern California.
Gabby, thank you so much for your comment. And if you are not a member and you want to chime in on the stories as we cover them, just go to tyt.com/join. You can become a member. And not only do you get perks like this, you help to support the show. You help keep us independent.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.